Houston Cougars. A furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to Scott Home Podcast, back here on what I believe to be the eve of Christmas Eve, just after at least a few days, a big Cougar basketball win, arguably I would say the biggest Cougar men's basketball win of the young season. Plenty to talk about there. Only a few days away from your Cougar football team getting back to the field for the first time in about a month and taking on the LSU Tigers in the Texas. We'll plenty to talk about there between the two of us, and we brought on a special LSU guest to give us the skinny from that perspective as well. A lot of other football subtopics as well, kind of here before the Texas Bowl, though the Bowl I think will take the majority of the talk there, but plenty of football stuff to talk about as well. Kind of merge that all into one word there. We have another program starting Big 12 season as well. We'll find at least a little bit of time to talk about tonight as well. Might be emphasis on a little there, but we're going to at least cover it before Bobby, you and I go do our pre-Christmas things. How you doing, pal?
Good, man. On this, this is one of the things my ex brought into my life that I absolutely still keep because it makes me laugh. Today is actually called Christmas Adam because it's the day before Eve was brought to you. So the first time she said it, I died laughing, and it's still really funny to me that today's Christmas Adam. So
I think we have at least one. Although I would understand if they're busy this week, one person who is in the clergy of some kind who's a regular listener to our show, and I hope that person
who might get a kick out of that.
I hope that person enjoyed it. I at least got a little internal groan there.
Yeah. But yeah, super excited. Holidays coming up. Cougar Bowl game on Saturday that I have lots of thoughts on, not even necessarily the game itself, but on other things. So super excited to talk that. Basketball had an awesome week. And like you said, another Cougar program started their Big 12 play. So we got some fun Cougar talk to talk about. Even on this holiday week, we are sitting here recording a podcast because that's what we do, buddy.
No weeks off. Bobby tried to put in the PTO because we definitely have a podcast PTO on like November 28th, and I just went to the calendar. I denied it. So it
was almost an auto deny. It was the craziest thing. I was like, man, I thought I had some hours to spare.
I thought it was like 5:30 a.m. his time. How's he already up denying my PTO? Rare instance, by the way, the two of us recording in the same state and time zone. You're not, of course, seeing the video on this one because we don't release the video, not for any reason, just other than it being a lot of extra work for not a whole lot of additional exposure to the show. But I'm coming to you all from the guest bedroom of my parents' beautiful place here in Galveston, Texas. So same state and same time zone, a rarity for the two.
It is very rare. It is very rare.
So we'll get to the Cougar talk though really quick. I will note here on the holiday week, please support us because I know Bobby and I both around the holiday times we've had in the last year or so decide like, what, I'm going to jump on and support this creator. If you're kind of on the fence about supporting the show, like you've been listening to us regularly, you like us, but I'm not sure I want to put some money behind it. Please consider supporting us at patreon.com/shpodcast. You'll get access to premium bonus basketball episodes, access to football reacts that we did throughout this entire season, just supporting the work that we do as an independent weekly Houston Cougar podcast as well. So if any of that sounds good to you, please go to patreon.com/shpodcast. In the next week or so, though, it would have been sooner if the co-host speaking right now hadn't forgotten to. We will also have our premium 2026 football signing class episodes where Bobby and I go deeper on a subject we've gone on here at least a little bit to talk about the 2026 Cougar football recruiting class, including but not limited to 1 5-star #1 national recruit, Keyshawn Henderson. So again, if any of that sounds good to you, patreon.com/shpodcast. I'll throw in a little additional mention to if you don't want to do that or have already doing that, but haven't done this other thing already, please give us a 5-star review. Costs nothing, but helps the work that Bobby and I do here pretty immensely. So we'll kick off, as you'd probably imagine, with the Cougar men's basketball team's 94-85 win over Arkansas at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey last Saturday afternoon. And besides the fact that the Cougs never really lost control of this game after going on that big run to go up 20-something points in the early first half, we finally saw last Saturday how good this year's version of Houston Cougar men's basketball can be, at least against a quality opponent, when they're making their shots. You beat a quality Auburn team last month, but I don't think anyone would confuse that for 40 minutes of consistently good offense. You didn't score a point in the final 3 minutes of that one. I would say ditto for wins over less quality Syracuse and Notre Dame teams at the Players era, where there were long stretches in both of those games where the Cougar offense, or maybe the Cougar offense minus one player making shots, went missing or wasn't close to the best version of itself. And Saturday against Arkansas, you saw a team being the best version of itself offensively, and all of us finally got to see how good the Cougs can be with some time playing together, with a few on-court tests already under their belt. Because it's not like Arkansas came into this game an untested team, Bobby. They'd played and almost beaten Michigan State and East Lansing. We're up on Duke before a bad final 10 minutes in Chicago, beat Louisville at home, and just the weekend before, beaten Texas Tech in Dallas. This was honestly a much more battle-tested team than the Cougs were. And there were points where the Hogs cut into the lead and didn't allow this game to be a laugher. But I can only speak for myself, Bobby, and I'll pass it off to you here and get your thoughts. I want to ask, at any point in watching this live, were you concerned that Arkansas was about to find a way to truly get back in this game? Because I asked this because I asked myself this question as I was doing my notes today, and I couldn't really think of any moment where I was, after the first few minutes of this game, after it was kind of just tied early, I wasn't really stressed about that. I was just expecting it to be a back and forth game. Were any points in this game where you were really stressed about the outcome, stressed about the Cougs winning this game?
So let me tell you the first 3 lines in my notes that I have here.
Hit me.
Men's basketball versus Arkansas, a game that even the 9-point spread is very generous to the Razorbacks. This game was over pretty early, in my opinion. It got a little squirrely at points, but in no way was I ever super worried about the outcome of this game.
It was one of those Arkansas was a couple shots. There was always a couple shots away from, they've got to like 5, and now U of H really has to start. But they never got it to that point.
Yeah, I think the lowest one I looked at got to 6, maybe 7 after that. And it never felt like you were expecting this huge run from Arkansas to, Arkansas kind of chipped away at it. We went on the big run to go up, 21, I think, off the top of my head. 2021, somewhere in there. And then they just kind of chipped away, and you saw what you kind of expected this game to be, a back and forth kind of battle. They got it down to, I think, 6 at one point. But it never was I like, oh no, if they go down here and make a shot. Anytime they did cut it to 6, you saw the Cougs kind of go on a quick little 4 or 5-0 run to jump it back up to 11. You just never really saw that kind of concern. I never really had that. And that was kind of the biggest high level thought that I had, just like you, where it never felt like this game was in danger of the Cougs not coming away with a pretty solid win here. We weren't worried in a game where we played a top 25-ish KenPom team. I know in the AP, they are a top 25 team. They're kind of right there on the border. They go in and out on KenPom depending on who played that day and if somebody looked good or something like that. But I would say solidly a top 25, 26, 20, top 30 KenPom team. And you were never worried about it. Just at no point. And that says a lot. The other losses that this team took was by 9 to Duke and 3 to the Spartans, Michigan State. Versus Duke, they actually led like half of the second half. They led like 10 minutes in the second half.
I remember watching pieces of that game and going back and be like, they lost that one by 9? I thought that one was close. I probably left to go do something like right at the point where they blew that one.
Yeah, I mean, you even look back at what they did, and Calipari even said this was the only top of those 5 games. These are the only ones that he felt like this was the only one he felt like his team never had a chance to win. Just kind of pointing out some solo performances in this game. Those are kind of my high level thoughts of the game. Kind of the solo performances. Seeing Emmanuel Sharp step up and just drain big buckets was just phenomenal. Loved what he was doing out there. You saw him shoot from range that I didn't think was possible, and I think you and I were texting places in New Jersey, New York that he was shooting it from and making it. I think I said
You said Manhattan, which I would say was the accurate one. I was like from Hoboken, but then I looked it up. I'm like, Hoboken's like 10 miles east of there. Didn't work as well as Manhattan. I think you
yeah.
nailed it the first time.
And then I think I even made the joke that like he shot it from the High Line in New York, like from the meatpacking district. So like we
From
kind of went on.
Soho.
Yeah, you and I kind of went on a. Which, by the way, when I traveled to New York, Soho is South Houston, and we were told it's Houston.
Yeah.
We were told it's not Houston, it's Houston. Pronounce it correctly, and the person who gave us that tip was correct. So just a little fun fact there.
I didn't know what it stood for. Interesting. I learned something today.
Yeah. Also, welcome to college basketball for Kingston Flemings, high-level college basketball. He's played in some other big games. This game was, I know it's going to come down as a neutral site, but there was a lot of Arkansas fans there. And the reason why Calipari gets this game and the reason why Arkansas is playing in this game is because Calipari's a Northeast guy. Like, there's no other reason why you would have Arkansas and Houston playing in New Jersey. Like, I know
mean,
it's
the event too. Like it was for like 9/11 charity.
yeah.
I think that's part of it too. And I think U of H and Arkansas got some money out of it, right?
Yeah, I would assume you would get a little bit there, but I think the reason why, like, Calipari always seems to play a game in the New York, New Jersey area.
Oh, yeah.
I think this was his game this year. And so there was, it's not a full road, but it definitely felt like there was more Arkansas fans there, and John Calipari fans there. I felt like when you needed a bucket, Kingston was able to beat his man for that bucket. Guy was getting to the rim easily. And just to see that from a freshman, you want to talk about a guy who was obviously a very big recruit, and people pointed to him as a one and done. I look at the NBA draft stuff, and you see him kind of creeping up, and he was like a low lottery pick, and now he's like mid to upper levels. I saw ESPN had him as like the 6th pick in this draft, and that's where Snack was to start the season. Like, Kingston Fleming is giving you things that I think you expected, but maybe not quite to the level that you were expecting them from him. And then another guy, just moving on from Kingston. This is going to be very odd, and you're going to kind of look at me. I know you are. I thought Said Lot.
I'm not gonna look at you odd. I'm not gonna look at you odd, actually.
Like you look at his stats and they don't say much. 9 minutes, 0 points. But with the foul trouble your bigs were in, you needed him to go in and just play his role. We need you to go in and just keep the lead where it is. Just maintain. If your guy scores, it's okay. Just make it difficult for him. Send him to the line if you need to. 9 minutes, 4 fouls. That's what he did, man. He did his job, and I love guys who just play their role, know their role, and play it really well. Even if it's not sexy. And then, on the other side of the ball, you saw we mentioned Acuff in the preview and said he was going to there was a good chance he was going to go off, and something you really kind of wanted to watch. And he had 27 against you, but Sam, this is going to sound weird. It didn't feel like an effective 27. Like, that's hard. It's hard to say the leading scorer in the game wasn't effective, but it never felt like he went on this run where they just handed him the ball and he just got them 8 straight points, and it was just like, oh man, Acuff really took over here and willed Arkansas back into this game. It never felt like that to me. And maybe I'm crazy, but the 27 just didn't feel like 27. I felt like he was pretty quiet in the game. I think Ewan or Irwin was
no, you got it right, Ewan.
Ewan, sorry. Ewan looked really good against us. He didn't shoot very good from the line. That size is a little bit of a concern. I think looking forward, you would hope that the game maybe doesn't get called that way. That's kind of what the Cougs need, is to keep the bigs out of trouble. And against a guy like Ewan, and we'll talk about some other bigs, it could be a problem. Something to just kind of, I'm not waving this like giant red flag going this alert. But he was definitely effective enough that you saw the Cougs play his own defense for the first time since, ever really. And that was good to be able to see that from the Samson team, to just how they were able to move into that matchup zone and still be pretty effective defensively. But it does say something that your bigs are in foul trouble, and you did have to kind of move off of your traditional defense and keep them out of the foul trouble, and keep him, from completely taking over the game. So it's something to just kind of watch for going forward. like I said, I don't know if it's a huge panic yet, but definitely something to just kind of watch for.
I would just say that there are a lot of things about this game that concerned me in the pregame in terms of like what Arkansas wanted to do and has done generally over the season versus what the Cougs have done. We'll go to the free throws, like and the fouling. Like this is an Arkansas team that was good at getting to the line, good at drawing fouls against a Cougar team that just will always year in year out, no matter the personnel, be very physical by nature of the team's style. Will send teams to the line a fair amount. And if you had told me before this game that we were only going to be minus 10 at the foul line and get there a decent amount, if that was the only thing you came from the future to tell me, Bobby, I don't think I would have been like, oh, well, we're for sure going to win. But that would have made me, I think, as irrationally confident that we were going to win this game as any stat that you gave me out of context. Like it was always going to be the Hogs going to the line more than the Cougars. That the Cougs were able to get some of Arkansas's key guys in foul trouble, especially and like just get to the line themselves. That's been, I think, that's been this team's big problem this year. I don't think you're fouling. You're really, if you look at how the team has done historically, you're not fouling that much more than you have like any other year. You're usually somewhere in the bottom 70 or 80 in the country in terms of opponents going to the free throw line. It's just always in nature, and like certainly not the worst. Like there have been some teams since Sampson's been here that have been bottom 30 or 40 in the country in that stat, and that's not this team. But this team has been, I think, and it's never been a huge part for the most part of what we do offensively to getting to the foul line. But this team hasn't been that great at that at the start of this year, and to see the Cougs be able to get Arkansas frustrated, get Arkansas guys in foul trouble when it's just not been something they've done very well. That was really critical early on when you were building that early 21-point lead. I don't want to go too far with saying Darius Acuff didn't impact this game. I think the number of freshmen who do what he's going to do against the Cougs this year is going to be a pretty small list. But I also agree with kind of what you said. Like, did any of those points really come at a big impact time? No. Like, did those points come at the numerous points where Arkansas had it not close, but somewhere between like 8 and 12 points? Like, if Darius Acuff and Malik Ewan go off in any of those spots, it's like a 3-4 point game. And now the Cougs really start sweating. Now the kind of pro Arkansas crowd that's in the building there maybe starts putting a little pressure on you there. And they were never able to do that. So in that sense, I agree with you, though. I think no one who watched this game would confuse Darius Acuff as anything other than somebody who's going to be very wealthy playing basketball in about 6-7 months time come the start of his professional career. Like
Absolutely.
Very, very good player. One in a long line of John Calipari freshmen, and not a given that because there have been highly talented freshmen who have faced the Cougs and not fared very well, and he is not one of those guys. But I think also the 4 turnovers and the Cougs' ability to turn over Arkansas more than Arkansas turned over the Cougs, which we knew was kind of the weakness of that they were coming into this game as a good defensive team, but not one that turned over opponents a fair amount. And the Cougs, I think, definitely had the edge, certainly early there as they kind of took over this game.
I didn't want to. I didn't know exactly how to put how I felt about Acuff. Like
I agree with you much more than I disagree. To be clear,
yeah. No, it wasn't that I thought he was ineffective. It's just because, again, like I said, it's hard to say that somebody's ineffective when they're the leading scorer in the game. But yeah, it didn't feel like the points came at critical times or any kind of like stretch like that where you were like, oh shit, here comes Acuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's gonna sound funny, but not all 27-point performances are created equal, and this is why I think Calipari, if you gave him truth serum, like obviously he did some good stuff in this one. I think he'd probably also say like, hey, some of the guys around, because really, DJ Wagner hit a couple shots early in this game and then disappeared. Nick Pringle and the guy Trevon Brazile was completely invisible in this one. I think both foul trouble, I think, was a big part of that early, but couldn't have told you a thing he did in this game other than get into early foul trouble. DJ Wagner, after hitting a couple threes early, just completely disappeared. That nobody on that team outside of Malik Ewan or Acuff impacted this game. I think it should be a credit to the Cougs, but also if you're looking for on the Arkansas side causes to why they win this game, I think that's there. And to this season, we've had a number of good Cougar offensive performances in our month and change of playing basketball. You had Kingston Flemings with 22 in kind of a road-ish setting against Auburn and Birmingham, especially that monster first half. He had 25 in the loss to Tennessee. a guy who clearly steps his game up against better opponents, and obviously what he did in this game. Emmanuel Sharp also having 26 against Syracuse, 27 against Florida State, Sinek having 18 and 9 against Auburn, and then 15 and 10 against FSU. But those are good individual performances. I believe this game was the Cougs' first really good team offensive performance against a quality opponent this season. I'm not going to read out a bunch of stat lines from the box score. I think you hit a lot of the key ones when you were talking earlier. I think you put it simply, it was one of those games where nearly every guy who stepped on the court for the Cougs contributed at least something offensively, and several had among their best games this season. And other than Ramon Walker Jr., who's definitely, I have plenty of Ramon Walker Jr. specific thoughts in this one, so don't worry, I'll get to that. But for me, the really exciting thing is I don't believe, other than Ramon, that any Cougar player had his respective best individual offensive game this season against Arkansas. And that's a good thing because it tells you that you beat this top 25 opponent away from home, that it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just everyone coming together to not miss from the field. It was a very good team game, and a number of guys played well, but in my opinion, last Saturday can be a preview of how good this Cougar team can be when everything is clicking. It's not a once in a blue moon effort. It's also not going to be indicative of every game. Like, you're going to have some down games. You're going to have some games that don't look like Saturday. Like, that's just how a basketball season goes. You're going to have to win ugly, and you're probably going to lose at least a couple ugly. You're about to get to a Big 12 schedule that's going to be even harder than it was each of the past two seasons when it wasn't necessarily easy. But I believe Saturday was a reminder that this Cougar team is every bit capable of competing with even those really high-end other Big 12 teams who have rightly been getting a lot of praise, but probably a bit more than the Cougs to start this season. And one of those things I think has flown a bit, under the radar again is, like I said, I'll just underscore what I said earlier to you. This team hasn't been good against the free throw line. You were a lot better here. You're probably going to be at a deficit against the teams that are really good at drawing contact, but if you can keep that manageable, that's going to make that a lot less of a terminal problem than it was, say, against Tennessee, where I do think that was not the thing that doomed you, but I think the fact that Tennessee was able to get to the line and you basically had to be a lot better making the first shot than Tennessee did, and just weren't able to ultimately against that opponent. I think if you get a little bit better there, if you get a little bit more free trips to shoot it there for 1 point, I think that's gonna continue to make your life a lot easier. But gotta single out Ramon Walker Jr. and the good kind of singling out because he was incredible on Saturday. It's not a coincidence that he was on the floor for nearly the entire period of the first half when you permanently retook the lead and pulled away noticeably. I went and double checked the play-by-play data to make sure I remembered this correctly from watching it live. He first subbed in just before 15 minutes, right when Sinek picked up his second foul. Right after he goes in, Darius Akov hits a 3 to tie at 11. By the time he checks out for, I think, about 5 minutes later, Cougars are leading 34 to 18 at that point. What we saw from him on Saturday is exactly what I'd been hoping we would see from Ramon in the preseason, that he could be an energy, a tone setter guy capable of hitting some big shots and making life really difficult on opposing players, kind of in the same way that we saw Malik Wilson do for the bench or off the bench for you for last year's Cougar team. And you'll remember, Bobby, last December, something clicked with Malik Wilson after Players Era last year, and he was an absolutely vital player for you, along with Javier Francis, I feel, for last year's team. Since that final Players Era game against Notre Dame, where Ramon was, I think, a positive for you and an ugly win, he started to become one of those first tone setter guys off the bench. If he could do something it's not going to look exactly the same because they're different players, they do different things well, but if he's kind of a reasonable facsimile of what we saw Malik Wilson give you last year, ooh, buddy, this year's team's going to be hell on wheels. This year's team's going to be a lot better for it. And not every game is going to be him scoring double digits off the bench. Would certainly love to be wrong about that, but I feel like pretty confident in making that prediction. But if he can do this periodically and still keep consistently doing the defense stuff, the rebound stuff, the hustle stuff for 15 to 25-ish minutes per game, this is going to be a really good team. This is going to be a team that already has a lot of good stuff and will be a lot better for Ramon being able to do that stuff.
Yeah, man, that was going to be my kind of big takeaway on your Malik thoughts on your Ramon Walker thoughts. My goodness, Sam.
Their games have become so intertwined that it's Malik, it's Ramon.
Malik last year, to your
Ramon
point.
singularity. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, to your point, last year, you remember it was that Christmas break where Malik kind of took that big step. I don't think it was quite right after the Players era,
No, it
but
was
you saw.
between like Players era and New Year's at some point. I want to
Yeah,
say it was like
yeah,
we beat Toledo and he had like a monster
yeah.
game or
There was
something.
some game like right at that Christmas time. There was like a Christmas break, and you just kind of saw him take a week off and then come back, and it was just a different game. And I think you're exactly right. We saw that with Ramon Walker this week. That's going to be a huge thing for the Cougs, is having that kind of sixth guy who's almost like a sixth starter versus that could start for another team. We all knew last year after Christmas that like Malik Wilson could have started for just about any team in the Big 12. Maybe and if you can start to get that
I'd
kind
add
of
Javier to that too. I thought
yeah,
Javier was
yeah.
Sorry.
And if you can add Ramon Walker to that this year, I think you got a lot of really good going on with this team heading into the new year and into Big 12 play.
I also wanted to shout out the games Kingston Flemings that Milos Uzan had. We've already talked about Fleming some, but the two of them did a really great job splitting your point guard reps. Asking this with a bit of hopeful optimism to you, and I guess the universe at large, knowing that it's not obviously a very binary yes-no, do you believe that we have finally start to see Kingston and Milos figure out how to split these point guard reps? I don't want to go too crazy about one game, but I feel like we're starting to see like an unmistakable trend line of these guys like starting to play well together, because it's been mostly outmatched opponents in the interim between this year's Players era and now, but like this just has started to look more consistently like a really good offensive team.
Yeah, I think I'd want to see it more than the couple of games. I don't think you're incorrect there. I mean, you go back to like the Tennessee game, you had 25 from Kingston, 17 from Milos. So I think there have been games where you have seen it. And I definitely think it's better than the start of the season. But before I would like plant my flag and be like, this shit's figured out, I would probably want to I'd probably want to see how it does versus Cincy and Tech in those first couple of games, things like that. But I definitely think it's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, that's fair. I've almost run out of positive things to say about Flemings, and we've had so many really, really good guards come through this program in the Kelvin Sampson era of Cougar men's basketball. But and I was thinking about this to myself. I can't remember a guard in this era who plays faster than Flemings, whether that's straight line speed, whether that's, I think, the stop on a dime and change direction stuff, which if anything, I think is even more, I guess, informative skill set, more a valuable skill set than straight line speed, because there's a lot of guys that probably have straight line speed, the ability to stop and start the way he does. It just, the ability to play fast and play faster than you've ever seen a Cougar guard play before. And also, so like obviously, like there are some turnovers. Like we've seen some times where Kingston is playing a little bit faster than either he can handle the guys around him. But this is still one of the better teams in the country at not turning the ball over. You would think having a guy who plays it as quickly as Flemings would also have more of a team effect, and it doesn't. Like U of H was unmistakably in the positive in this game and has mostly been this season. He's top 100 nationally in assist and steal rate, top 50 in 3-point shooting percentage, top 55 individually in effective field goal percentage. I'm certain anyone who watched the Arkansas game, who is a player evaluator type, whether they're someone who actually works for a professional team or just does it on the side, I'm sure those people saw plenty from Sinak, from Uzan, of course, from the Arkansas duo of Acuff and Ewan. But I'm certain all of my U of H biases acknowledged here that no player of the several guys with pretty serious future pro prospects who played in this basketball game came out of it with more positive buzz than Kingston did. I remember at the Players era game, I was sitting behind some guys who weren't Tennessee or U of H fans. I can't remember. They were from one of the teams that had played immediately before. Cool guys. We talked periodically during the game. And they asked me, this is obviously at this point a month ago, early this season, like, you think he has a couple more years in college? And I just involuntarily laughed and I said, no. Even more convinced a month later that this young man is a special player and a very soon to be future highly praised professional. Well, that was hard to say. And I'm going to savor every minute of him playing for the Cougars.
Yeah, man, he's gotten you have seen his offensive game really take off, and I would argue he's one of the best young offensive point guards we've seen come through
He's
this
the
program.
best. All respect to freshman year Caleb Mills. All respect to freshman year Galen Robinson, who did a nice job splitting point guard reps as a freshman 10-ish years ago. But I would say I would say the best. I'm comfortable planting that flag at least.
Like, he's so good. And the thing that really that blows my mind is how good he is at getting to the basket. Like, he's so good at getting to the hoop. And that's always kind of been, not to like take shots at any of the point guards that we've ever had. That's not been something that we've seen from our point guards. They
100%.
haven't really been able to do that.
Maybe
And now-
Deke Giroux at times, but you're right. Like, not something they did insanely often.
Yeah, our guys were pretty good shooters, and they were dogs on the defensive end. I think you can still see moments where he is a dog on the defensive end, but at the same time, you do see moments where he's still a freshman on the defensive end. You see that with Chris Sinak as well. You see that with the young guys, that the defense isn't quite where you expect it to be from, whoever, from a Milos Uzan, from a Marcus Sasser on the defensive end, but offensively, he more than makes up for it there.
Couple more points, hardly the most important ones, but I will just say, after the pain of watching, as someone who came up in the mid to late 2000s of U of H men's basketball, as you often were one of the 12 to 15 students there with me, Bobby. Although for these games, usually it was the hundreds. Usually the casual crowd came out for these ones. Awesome to finally see the Cougs beat a John Calipari coach team.
Oh, thank God. Thank God.
Not that was like something weighing heavily on my conscience, but it's just it was one of the things I actually didn't think about until the game was done. I was just like, oh my God, 20 years later, I've finally seen Houston Cougar basketball beat John Calipari.
Yeah.
And like the Memphis Calipari era, when they were, a top 5 to 15-ish program, depending on the year. And we were respectable for what little money we were putting into the program under Tom Penders, something I appreciate much more now than I did as a younger man.
Yeah.
But we were not that.
No.
And the pain of the 2019 Sweet 16 loss to Cal and Kentucky and Kansas City that Dustin and I were up there for. Cool to finally see us beat that team and that coach. Did you see they mentioned this early in the broadcast, Bobby? This was only the second time, besides that Sweet 16 game I just mentioned, that Calipari and Sampson have faced off.
Yeah, that's crazy to think they've both been coaching that long. And it's not like one was like toiling around at the lower levels, and one was at the super high level. They were both high level coaches. I mean, they didn't match up one time in an SEC Big Ten, and I know,
Yeah, they were never in the same conference, but also they were quite often in, like, you're just like, how was there not a random like Oklahoma and Memphis in like the 2005 round of 32 or something like that?
Exactly.
When James was there.
Yep, it was very odd that those two hadn't really met up that many times.
My last point, we'll just put out there into the universe that I would love an actual home and home between the Cougs and Razorbacks. I would love to see the Cougs play at Bud Walton Arena in Fayetteville. I went there just actually almost 9 years ago exactly with my dad when we had the first leg of a home and home that we had with the Hogs early on when Samson was here. It was a Cougar loss, but like it was a great atmosphere, super cool fans. These should be two very good teams for the foreseeable future. Let's get this great matchup at Walton. Let's get it at the Fertitta Center, because that's really the only thing that this, I think, very good basketball game was missing was the cool on-campus setting.
Yeah, the problem is we never seem to have the cool on-campus games that aren't Big 12. We move them to Toyota, and then we don't sell out Toyota.
But also, I think some of that's also, a condition of like from what Samson said before the Auburn game last year, that having it at the Toyota Center and also the money, you're doing the little money thing, because that's what it is. Like, getting the money for it. Like I think it's critical, and also getting teams to want to play at Fertitta, where very few teams ever win. Like that's a challenge too. I don't want to put it entirely and say like, oh, it's the school's fault. We have all these great teams there banging on our door wanting to play at the Fertitta Center. Like that's probably not the case. But
Agreed.
would love it. That's why I'm putting it out of the universe. Would love it if that would happen. If we could finally get an exciting it can only just be one. Like I get it. We're not gonna have a whole full slate of them because Big 12 play is tough. Like you don't want to just absolutely ruin your if you have a younger team's confidence. There's reasons not to have a murderer's row non-conference schedule.
Agreed.
But just like one like top 25ish level opponent for Tita like next year. I'm just wish casting. And the Arkansas team would be a good one though. Like you said, I'll believe it happens when I see it.
Absolutely.
Up next, the Cougs will be back at the Fertitta Center for the final non-conference matchup of the season, hosting the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders next Monday evening. The Blue Raiders have some solid non-conference wins. They've beaten UAB, Murray State, and Kennesaw. They should be among the teams contending for the CUSA 1 bid, along with Liberty, New Mexico State, and Western Kentucky. Bobby, tell me what you've learned about the Blue Raiders.
Yeah, man, can I be honest?
Sure.
I tried to figure out something that would make this interesting, and it wasn't easy necessarily. I did
tell me like
that...
Murfreesboro and Osaka, Japan are like sister cities or something.
Not quite.
Okay, hit me. Sorry.
No, the big thing that I saw is that they do have a little bit of size. I don't know if you kind of noticed that. And after what we saw with versus Arkansas, they have a 6'11" forward is what they're calling him. 6'11" to me will be a center for as long as time exists. So that could be something to kind of watch for. But I don't know, man. This one's kind of tough to preview. This could be a chance for an overlooked game. You're about to start Big 12 play. It's your final non-con game. Maybe you overlook it. But here's the thing. We haven't really been bitten by that. We've been really lucky and fortunate that Coach Sampson just doesn't allow his teams to think like that. So we haven't really been bitten by that bug. Maybe you see their size kind of comes in. They don't even utilize their size that well. But maybe you see their 6'11" forward, Chris Loof. I'm going with Loof.
Yeah, I think Loof.
Maybe you see him get our bigs into some early foul trouble, and we see what we saw a little bit versus Arkansas. But I would hope that this game isn't very close. But
I struggled for the same reasons you did there. I try to look at the hypotheticals of how an opponent can make the Cougs sweat. Like, what are the ingredients for this being a closer game than we'd like? And the challenging part about that is that the Blue Raiders do some things well offensively, but objectively, very below average shooting team. Well outside the national top 200 in 2-point field goal percentage, 3-point field goal percentage, and free throw percentage. And they aren't the kind of team that gets to the line a lot. So how are you going to beat Houston Cougar men's basketball without putting the ball in the basket? Usually be freakishly good at offensive rebounding, be freakishly good defensively. And they're not really any of those things. They're one of the worst teams in the country at forcing turnovers, something that I think we saw bite Arkansas last weekend. Like, Arkansas did a lot of things well defensively coming into that game, but the fact that they couldn't really be disruptive to the Cougs offensively, I think that's what made it really tough for them to stay in that one. I will say, and I think this probably relates to the size, the Blue Raiders are very good at defending on the perimeter, and they will test a Cougar team that's been better at shooting from deep in recent weeks. I just wanted to mention something that kind of blew my mind here. One of the players who I actually think is probably going to miss this game injured against the Cougs, Alec Oglesby, actually faced the Cougs in 2021 in that tournament as a freshman. His lone season play at Cleveland State. That was our opening round game that season. If you or anyone listening forgot, like you said, team that has a lot of length, guys like Torrey Alston, Kamari Lands, Sean Smith, and Jared Hall, who are all between 6'3" and 6'9". You mentioned their big man Loof as well. Their coach Nick McDevitt, I think, has one of those like low key, like, this guy's actually, I think, doing pretty well considering like where he's been. He led UNC Asheville to multiple conference titles and NCAA tournament appearance. He led the Blue Raiders to the NIT last year, and I think has them among the teams contending in a 1-bid league, which I think that's what you should be expected to do at Middle Tennessee. Like, you're not that far from Nashville and a few other like Mid-South population centers, so you can get guys, especially guys out of the portal who are maybe like bounce backs from a higher level who didn't work out. Like, but also like you're probably not getting enough resource wise where, oh, you should be dog walking Conference USA. Like Liberty's probably spending the most there, and not surprisingly, they have the highest KenPom, though they don't seem to be the team that's like far and away better than their opponents. I think this is a good opponent for right before Big 12 play started, because they aren't like a Ryder or Jackson State level walkover opponent, but they're not going to be a team that's a confidence killer either.
Absolutely, that is kind of the initial thought that I had as well. Is like, this is a team that you're not gonna be up quickly, by 50, but you're gonna have to play a C+ game to get by them, and it's a good chance that, again, you don't have that kind of confidence killer heading into the conference slate.
I Googled it while you're talking, Bobby. According to Google's AI overview, so some pretty big caveats there. Murfreesboro itself does not have a primary sister city, but its close neighbor, Smyrna, Tennessee, does have a long-standing sister city relationship with Zama City, Japan, since 1991. So I feel like I get like half credit there for my absolute insane.
I'll give it to you.
There we
I'll
go.
give it to you.
Before I waste any more time on things of this nature, we have a little football game that the two of us are going to talk about and be in attendance for later this week, the Kinders Texas Bowl. And we did our little bowl trip down memory lane last week, and appreciate all of y'all who both enjoyed it and also shared your own U of H bowl memories. This week, we're going to be laser focused on this matchup itself between the Cougs and the LSU Tigers. And as we've been doing all year, we got someone closer to the source to help us get to know this opponent a little better in the week leading up to this game. I think Bobby and I finished strong with our 12th and final football preview guest of the season, so let's give that one a listen here. We're joined today on the Scott Holm podcast by Hunt Palmer. He's the host of pregame and postgame football coverage on the LSU Sports Radio Network. He's also somebody who's been on the LSU and Louisiana sports beat for over a decade now. Hunt, thank you for coming on the Scott Holm podcast today.
Absolutely. Happy to be with y'all.
So for our listeners who haven't followed the trials and tribulations of the current LSU football season as closely as perhaps the two of us have here, can you give us the quick rundown of why LSU is coming to this game with an interim staff in the first place?
Yeah, sure. Brian Kelly got the job 4 years ago, and he got off to a great start. Jaden Daniels and that team had a really impressive first year with a makeshift roster, and they won the SEC West, beat Alabama, and the thought was that they were an ascending program under Brian Kelly. And the next year, Jaden Daniels won the Heisman Trophy, and they were the best offense in college football, and they were the worst defense in LSU history. So they lost 3 games, and after a disappointing season last year, the commitment was made by the booster base and by Brian Kelly himself to really invest in the transfer portal and the roster. He had been on the record saying, we're not going to buy players here at LSU. That's not how we're going to do things. And he changed his tune pretty quickly. And they spent a lot of money on the 2025 roster. They went out and got the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. They had a 5th-year senior quarterback coming back, brought in a ton of playmakers on the outside, had Blake Baker as defensive coordinator and a staff that was in place and had a lot of continuity. And the expectations were sky high. They were a top 10 team preseason, and they beat Clemson on the road in the opener. And the thought was, okay, this is among the best teams in college football. This is a team that can win a national championship. They're going to be really good. They were not. The defense was much better. It was a solid unit. The offense was a complete disaster. They did not score more than 25 points on a single FBS team this year. There's a little caveat to that. They would have against Arkansas, but the running back Harlan Berry slid on the 20-yard line to help run the clock out instead of running it in for a touchdown. But they still didn't do it. They were one of the worst offenses in the Southeastern Conference. And after an embarrassment against Texas A&M, where they were winning at halftime, and in the second half, the Aggies just annihilated LSU, emptied out the stadium, took over from a crowd perspective, and ran LSU off the field, the decision was made to fire Brian Kelly and to move in a different direction. It's been a circus since then, and now that Lane Kiffin's here, you feel like there may be an upward trajectory from here, but it was a disastrous October and November for LSU, no question.
So still focusing on the current season Tiger team, what differences have you seen from this group since Brian Kelly was fired in late October and Frank Wilson took over as the interim?
Really, the only difference, and has nothing to do with the coach, is that Garrett Nussmeier got hurt. He's been hurt all year. He got hurt in camp, starting quarterback. He threw for the second most yards in the history of LSU football in a single season last year. Only Joe Burrow in 2019 ever threw for more. He threw for more last year than Jaden Daniels did in his Heisman season. But he got hurt in camp, and it never healed. And they tried to just screen their way with a limited quarterback with an oblique injury, and it just didn't work. And he finally pulled the plug before the Western Kentucky game, and they've gone with Michael Van Buren for the last 3 games. It has not gone very well. He made some plays to win the Arkansas game against the worst defense in the SEC, which was nice to see for him, but they haven't been good on offense. So as far as it goes from significant differences from Kelly to Wilson, there's not much, but Nussmeier was the quarterback for all of Kelly's games, and Van Buren has taken over, and he'll play in the game coming up next Saturday.
One of those post-coach firing zombie team bowl games I randomly remember, it's the post-Ed Orgeron 2021 LSU team that played actually in an earlier version of this game with, I believe, 40-something players against Kansas State. Would you say this year is a comparable situation 4 years later? And if not, what are the differences with how engaged this current year's team is in the bowl game versus the previous one?
Not at all. It's not similar at all. That team just quit. They were out of bodies, and they did not have a quarterback. They literally played that game with John Trey Kirkland, a wide receiver at quarterback.
That's right.
They had somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 scholarship players. Like, that game should not have been played. And credit LSU and John Trey Kirkland, who said, they tell us when and where to play. We're going to show up and play. We're Tigers and all that. It's all well and good. It doesn't make that game interesting or compelling or reasonable at all. And then when you compare that to the next year where LSU went to Florida and played a Purdue team that had basically quit because Jeff Brom had left and their quarterback decided not to play and their top 2 wide receivers decided not to play and their running back, and then LSU beat them by 60. And those 2 games have kind of scarred me personally with these bowl games. I don't know that I can recover from that, but I will say that LSU is going to field a reasonably constructed football team next Saturday. They will have offensive linemen. They will have wide receivers. They will have their backup quarterback, but a scholarship quarterback who has started 9 SEC games. And their defense is relatively intact outside of a linebacking core where the 2 Weeks brothers are not going to play. And then Mansour Delane is not going to play either, who's the best corner in college football. But they have other corners. So they're not at full strength, but they'll be functional in the game.
So we kind of talked about that full strength here, but a lot of times bowl games under an interim coaching staff are chances for the new head coach and their personnel people to kind of, evaluate the roster they're stepping into for the following season. So as someone who covers the team, which specific players or even position groups do you think will be scrutinized most closely in this game by Kiffin and his staff?
It's interesting because I could give you some young players, some position groups that could have an opportunity to play in this game and, take a step forward. But I can't sit here in mid-December and suggest that I know that any of those players will be on LSU's roster next year. Like, that's just the reality. They could transfer. They could go to the NFL. They could come back to LSU. So I don't know. I think that from a talent perspective, I'm looking forward to seeing Harlem Berry potentially get a significant amount of carries. He was the number 1 high school running back in the country last year. He's had some flashes on this team as a freshman as the season has gone on. But look, he is a guy that is from New Orleans. He played for running back coach Frank Wilson, who's recruited him for 5 years. And it's reasonable and potentially realistic that Frank Wilson's going to be the Ole Miss running back coach next year. Is Harlem Berry going to go with him to Ole Miss? I don't know. So I'm excited to see him, but I don't know that he's going to be on the team next year. I think that LSU's young linebackers, Devon Keys, Tylen Singleton, Zach Weeks, the 3rd Weeks brother, Charles Ross, those guys are talented and could have a chance to play in this game because Whit Weeks and West Weeks are not going to play in this game. But I don't know if they're going to be on the team next year. So it's a reasonable question, and one that absolutely 10 years ago would have been the focus in this game. Who are the young players that you could see that are going to be next year's stars? And maybe those guys will be for LSU, but maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be somewhere else in the SEC.
No doubt. We'll go a little big picture with this one. as we've been pretty focused on the game. But while we have you here, figure a little LSU big picture talk is worthwhile. Beyond the most obvious things like winning a national title, even making the CFP in the first place, what do you believe LSU's leadership is looking to get from hiring Lane Kiffin as its next football head coach?
Compete for SEC championships, make the playoff at least as much as you don't, and go make a run and win a national championship. I mean, that expectation does not change in Baton Rouge based on the last 25 years. LSU's won 3 national championships. They played for a 4th, and they've won 2 Heisman trophies in the last 6 years, and the expectation does not change. I often hear fans suggest that for X amount of dollars, if Brian Kelly's making $95 million, like, he needs to be better than this. Lane Kiffin's got a contract for $92 million. He needs to do this and this. The dollar amount the coach makes does not change the expectation at LSU. Like, if LSU would have hired Kenny Dillingham for $5 million a year instead of Lane Kiffin for $13, you would not say, well, let's just hope he can make the Texas Bowl. Like, it comes with the job, not the salary. You have to compete for championships at LSU. The bottom didn't fall out on Brian Kelly. Like, they weren't terrible this year. They beat Clemson. They went on the road to a playoff team in Ole Miss and played them pretty much straight up. They went to a 10-2 Vanderbilt team and played them pretty much straight up. They were leading Texas A&M at halftime before they got run off the field. It wasn't awful under Brian Kelly here. He won the West in one of his 4 seasons, 3.5 years, won a Heisman Trophy. They have a good defense this year. They had a great offense 2 years ago, but they didn't compete for championships, and that's the end of the line. You have to do that at LSU, and if you don't, they'll try to find the next guy to do it.
All right, so we're going to ask you a question, kind of going back to the game a little bit. This is one we've asked all of our guests this season, whether they'll be here after this game or not. Who is a player, or maybe players, the two of us, Sam and I, are most likely overlooking in our efforts to preview this team, who you think will have a big impact for LSU in the Texas Bowl?
I would say it's probably 2 names, and I don't know if you've overlooked them or not. The first would be Trades Green. I gave the same answer to a Clemson podcast radio show that I was on in August. Trades Green was the number 1 tight end in the country 2 years ago. He is legitimately 6'7", and he is a legitimate SEC basketball player. He will not play SEC basketball anymore, but he did as a freshman last year. And if you type his name into YouTube, you'll see at Alabama, team that was a Final Four team, he flies out to the perimeter, blocks a shot, runs it down, and throws down a dunk. I mean, he is a freakish athlete, and there is not a single defensive player in college football that can physically match up with him, because there are no defensive players that are 6'7" that can run and jump. They don't exist. They don't exist in the SEC, Big 12, NFL. They don't exist. And he is 6'7" and can leap like a basketball player. So what LSU does, they did this at Clemson, they did this at Ole Miss, they did this against Texas A&M. They do this very frequently. If they get inside the 5-yard line in the red zone, they will essentially set up in a formation, and then they'll run a double motion, and they'll get Trades Green out by himself on one side of the field. And they'll force the defense to decide what they want to do. If you want to put a corner on him, which, like Clemson put Avion Terrell on, who's their best corner, who's going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick. And Garrett Nussmeier just threw a lob up, and he just jumped over him and caught it. And Texas A&M is one of the best defenses in the country, and they put their best corner on him. And Garrett Nussmeier just threw a lob up, and he jumped up and caught it. And there's just not a lot you can do if the throw is in a good spot. And LSU doesn't get in the red zone enough to create as many statistics as Trades Green will likely rack up at a certain point in his career. But he is a matchup nightmare for everyone, and I would suggest that that's one. And his statistics won't jump because LSU can't throw the ball. So they can in the red zone, and they do then, but they don't sustain drives, and they're just not very good on offense. The other one on defense is a headliner, but is a guy that is going to be better as his time moves forward, is DJ Pickett, number 1 corner in the country last year out of Florida, and was on 3's National Defensive True Freshman of the Year, 3 interceptions. He is a freak of an athlete as well. He's 6'5", which you don't see very often at cornerback, but Corey Raymond loves those long cornerbacks, and he's he's had an awesome year, and he's going to be the number one corner next year. Is Mansour Delane, who I think should have won the Thorpe last weekend. As he moves on to the NFL, where he'll be a first-round pick. DJ Pickett's next up at DBU is the next great cornerback.
So we'll close today with a question we've asked a lot of our guests. You could be as general or specific as you would like. In your opinion, as someone who's seen a lot of this LSU team this season, what do you think is the most likely outcome for the Texas Bowl when the Cougars and Tigers take the field?
I'll be 100% candid with you and suggest I don't know a ton about Houston at this point, other than Willie Fritz is really good, and I know Connor Wigman because of his time in College Station. I know what their record was, and so I'll kind of lean more so on my LSU side of things than maybe a matchup situation. LSU is bad on offense. They're very bad on the offensive line. They do not block for the run at all. Their pass protection is mediocre. They've had a patchwork front all year. They couldn't run the ball on Western Kentucky or Louisiana Tech. Certainly couldn't run it on the Texas A&Ms and Ole Misses of the world. So this suggests that they're going to score a lot of points in this game would be completely disingenuous. I think LSU, as they've done pretty much all year, will score somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 points. Now, the question is LSU's defense good enough to hold Houston under that, which they did to Clemson, and they did to Arkansas, and they did to Florida and South Carolina? Or is the losing Mansour Delane, losing Jack Pyburn, who's not going to play, I don't think, at defensive end, losing your two linebackers, does Houston do enough offensively to win the game? My gut tells me, without knowing a ton about Houston's offense, that they will probably score more than 17 points, just because that's generally what teams do, and LSU is shorthanded on defense. So I would expect Houston to win a close game, but it would surprise me if it got out of hand. I think it's a game that's played somewhere around the 17, 20, 23-point mark.
I think we're of similar minds there. Hunt Palmer, thank you so much for helping us get to know the LSU Tigers a little bit better, and I'm sure the sincere hope of your fan base is that our two schools' paths aren't crossing anytime soon. But happy we got to talk to you about this bowl game.
Aren't they supposed to be playing in the season opener coming up? I think that's supposed to happen.
Postseason paths crossing and playing.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're supposed to be seeing.
Look, there's not a lot of buzz for the Texas Bowl here in Baton Rouge. It's all eyes on the portal coming up to follow. But we'll be watching, and I'll be doing pre and post game. It's great to talk to you all. Have a great holiday season.
All right, so I want to thank Hunt Palmer for joining us. Great guest, had a lot of good insight into just LSU in general and this upcoming game. So, Sam, I just want to start out by saying I'm excited because it's a bowl game, right? I am excited for this game. I'm coming in town for it. I'm excited I get to see you. I get to see a whole bunch of friends. I'm excited to play a school like LSU, a school that has a lot. But I am a little disappointed with how not excited it seems LSU is for this game. They came in with huge high hopes heading into the season, and everything that you see from LSU about this game is like a quick blurb, like, oh yeah, these couple of guys aren't playing, and everything coming out of Baton Rouge right now is next year, the next 4 or 5 years. Understandably so, right? With they won the coaching carousel, they won the press conference. I don't know if they actually won the carousel, but that's a talk for a different day. To be honest with you, Sam, when I was previewing this game and like looking at it, I could talk about what's going to happen on the field and the excitement that I have for that. But I'm going in a little bit of a different direction on why I'm excited for this game. This game to me really, it doesn't matter who we're playing. This feels like the reintroduction of Houston Cougar football to the national stage. This really feels like a celebration of this year's team, but also a coming out party of sorts. This is the moment where it really feels like we're going to see a ton of U of H fans. This will be the night casual U of H fans and casual alumni go, hell yeah, that's my team. And it really feels like a celebration of being a Cougar is going to happen on Saturday. I saw it in San Antonio, but we're in Texas, man. Football runs everything. I think if you asked a lot of our fans, you had the basketball team that you have, but you also had the football team you had the last 2 years, or you had a pretty good football team and the basketball team was like made the tournament, but was like getting eliminated. I think a lot of our fans would probably choose contend for the Big 12 title in football and then be decent in basketball. I don't think I would do that, but I get it, right? That's what the casual fan is going to be attracted to. This weekend really feels like the weekend where the Big 12 and the schools that remain from the Big 12 of a couple of years ago realize and remember why they didn't want to invite U of H. That's what this game means to me and what this game feels like. The Cougs are here. The Cougs are ready. We are a good program in this recruiting area, and this is what they feared. Do I necessarily think we're going to win the game? I do. But I think even if you have a close loss in this game, it's not going to kill that momentum. I think the fans are going to be loud on TV. I think there's going to be a sea of red. I don't know what suddenly has come over me with this, but I think the date helps, right? I think 2 days after Christmas on a Saturday night at like 8:15, we're going to be the game on. If you're watching college football, we're not going to be preempted by many things. Like, it just feels like the coming out party. All of my favorite Cougar fans and friends are going to be in attendance for this game. Sam, can you think of the last time me, you, Dustin, Bill, Mike Brown, and many, many others were all in the same building for a game? There's a level of excitement that we haven't had in a couple of years. I can't think of the last time you and I
mean, probably the Oklahoma game 9 years ago.
Yeah. So
that,
like
it is not that level of opponent like in game, but I would say that was the last time I was this level of confidence that like there's going to be a U. And that game actually surprised me for how good the crowd actually ended up being. I was just hoping we'd be like not. I figured it will be like 40% to Oklahoma 60, and that ended up being like 60-40 Cougar fans. In all honesty, I'm not even predicting that here necessarily, but that was the last time I was like really confident about a Cougar crowd showing up. And I'm like you. I think we, as always, we differ in certain ways, but like in the big picture sense, I agree with you. I think this is going to be a very good Cougar crowd and has the chance to be that coming out party kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, I think Saturday we make an announcement to the college football world that the Houston Cougars are here. Like, if we win, there's a good chance we finish the season as a top 25 team in football.
We're top 25 right now, so I wouldn't think I think we would stay.
Yeah, and so you, especially even in the AP, like right now we're top 25, but we're not top 25 AP. I think we sweep and make the top 25 in all three polls if we win this game, especially if we look really good in it. We are a win on Saturday. You're a top 25 team in football and a top 10 in basketball. I'm sorry, but this is like our moment. This is the reemergence of Houston Cougar sports. And I know that seems like it's a lot of pressure on this game, but I think this is going to be the game where we give the middle finger to the Alamo Bowl and we say, hey, you probably should have invited the Cougs. This feels, just everyone I've talked to, social media, that we are going to get a good crowd, and it's going to be that kind of game and coming out party for this program, not this team, not anything. This feels like the moment for the athletic department as a whole. I know the Final Four was kind of that first step, and going there and seeing the support and all the noise that we made and doing all that. I feel like this Cougar team, this really feels like the last kind of very bad, not even very bad. This feels like the end of that era where things just weren't very good. And you could say that whole season was this, but this is the cherry on top to a season where you have kind of emerged. And like, I noticed in my conversations with people, like, oh man, I didn't realize U of H had 9 wins. Oh, you guys got 9 wins. Oh, you guys play LSU. Oh, you're in a bowl game. Like, yeah, man, like here we come, and you're going.
The casuals are becoming re-aware of this again. You're right.
Yes, and that is what I feel Saturday is. So yeah, I could talk what's going to happen in the game, what I think, but to me, the bigger story heading into Saturday is this Cougar program taking another step, and not just this Cougar football program, but this entire. This is our announcement that we are here and we are going to. Are we going to compete for the Big 12 every single year? No, that's not how the Big 12 works. Do I think this is a college football playoff team year in, year out? No. But what I can tell you is the days of going 4-8, 5-7, they might happen occasionally when you have some injuries, things like that. But this really feels like the time where you are going to get 2009 to like 2017 Houston Cougar football.
I would agree. And I don't think we differ in any meaningful ways on the big picture topic stuff there. I think I'm there with you. I think there's an enthusiasm behind this game that we haven't necessarily seen in the last 7-8 years, really since Tom Herman left for Texas. Just like I feel like 4 years ago, was like, especially defensively, it was a good team. I think maybe a little like the 12-2 record they had 4 years ago. Maybe it was a bit inflated based on poor competition. And you could sort of see like it was a fun season in that, hey, it was coming out of COVID and like, hey, we're actually like decent football game, but you never saw like the casual fan take it seriously. And I hate to say it, but I think casual fans at least somewhat vindicated there because you saw that team not really be a serious contender when they had a clear path to do so the year afterwards. And that's not the case here. I think this league, I think people now see, hey, this is a more serious football program. And this is not a team that's a constant disappointment. Like, is it a fully realized team? Is it going to be a serious every year competing for the national title kind of team? No, because it's not financially supported like one. And if you're someone out there who has many tens of millions of dollars burning a hole in your pocket, you could probably change that. But if you don't, frankly, just showing up Saturday and showing up generally during the season when you can and giving money as you can, that's the solution to that problem. We'll say for the on-field, because I'll hit that a little bit here. I got some notes on that. Even as someone who is somewhat aware, somewhat familiar with what's going on, and I guess more specifically what has not gone right with LSU this season as a big national college football story, the difference between their offense and defense is so crazy. Like one of the craziest dichotomies we've seen from a high-profile program like LSU in a long time. Because I don't think it's an exaggeration. You can tell me if I'm wrong, though. If you paired this LSU defense, not with an elite offense, we'll say like a top 40 offense, I think they're in the college football playoff, or at the very least, just on the wrong side of the college football playoff bubble instead of being where they are right now, which is competing in the Texas Bowl and just being on the right side of bowl eligibility. I will say still, even with one key opt-out and a couple other guys not playing, we have not seen any other defense of LSU's caliber this season other than Texas Tech. I guess the good news there is that there's not anything close to a good offense complementing that good LSU defense like Texas Tech had. The most notable player that we will not see from LSU is, not surprisingly, Mansour Delane, one-time Virginia Tech transfer, part of a very expensive but very successful portal group on that side of the ball. You wouldn't expect a future first-round consensus All-American type guy to play in this game. As a football fan, I would have loved some Amari Thomas versus Mansour Delane one-on-ones, but again, you can't be surprised he's not playing in a non-New Year's Six caliber bowl game. I have become a bit of a crotchety old man about some of the new attitudes from players and teams towards these games, but this is 100% one of those situations where, quite frankly, I think LSU and defensive coordinator Blake Baker, who's going to be on Lane Kiffin's staff going forward, would benefit from seeing what Delane's possible replacements can do with these reps versus playing a guy who's about to be a future pro in this game. We're also not going to see linebackers Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins. Perkins was one of those guys, Bobby, you may remember, had a monster freshman season and just could never equal that in any of the subsequent ones. Still kind of the level of opt-outs you would expect from this game. And even with those guys subtracted, even for a Cougar offense that was drastically improved over last year, but wasn't what you'd call as a consistent product, a challenging matchup. We'll be seeing a familiar face that you mentioned a little earlier, Bobby, and AJ Halsey. And again, for everything that went wrong with LSU in the big picture this season, didn't really go wrong with their defense. And certainly Halsey got everything he would have wanted out of this transfer. First team All-SEC, multiple publications, All-American, and being a critical part of an elite defense. And not to mention, I'm sure, a pretty sizable amount of money to go along with it. Not saying Halsey couldn't have put himself in good position for his pro future at U of H, but we'll be honest, we're not big SEC honks here, but doing it in the SEC certainly put a cherry on top of that professional resume. That I'm sure he's going to be a drafted guy here in several months' time. I wouldn't be mad if Halsey also decided to opt out for obvious reasons, because I wouldn't mind not going against a guy who I've watched multiple seasons of being an outstanding multi-level player. Like, just one of those guys, man, like good at the intercepting passes, good at the run defense, versatile in a way that very few safeties, even fewer who've put on a U of H uniform, can do. A very one-of-one player. But I would imagine also him playing back in Houston, his hometown, one more time has at least some kind of draw that if he was, I mean, again, we're recording this on December 23rd. So obviously there's a chance that he or other people that we may have mentioned opt out between now and the game. But I would think that's some kind of draw. I think U of H can win this game with 2 touchdowns and a field goal from offense and maybe a special teams or defensive score. But it's not a given you can get that even against an LSU defense that has some opt-outs. That's how good they are. The flip side, very, very little nice to say about their offense. I would say very much, and this is crazy to say for LSU, but very much along the same lines as like Oklahoma State, Oregon State. Like that's how bad these guys are. Like our guest said it. Like them scoring over 20 points just hasn't happened other than
doesn't happen. Yep.
Even against like hilariously outmatched teams like Louisiana Tech, they didn't do it. Not to mention, against a Cougar defense has been mostly good this season. We'll be seeing quarterback Michael Van Buren, their backup, who played most of the last half of the season, who I don't think I'm being unfair in saying will probably not be the guy taking starters reps here in about 8-9 months, Bobby, when LSU kicks off their 2026 season. They had a potential first round kind of guy in Garrett Nussmeier, who was really hurt most this year and has been out for a while, will obviously be out for this one. We'll say Van Buren hasn't thrown a ton of picks this year, but also he has under 6 yards per attempt, so not really doing much downfield. They have one of the worst rushing attacks in college football and at least one starting O lineman opting out of this game. I mean, this is going to be the side of the ball that I think Lane Kiffin and that new staff will take the metaphorical dynamite to once this current season is over. I've already seen LSU as kind of a name to watch with some of the big quarterback transfers in this cycle, guys like Josh Hoover, DJ Lagway, and Brendan Sorsby. I mean, again, the only offenses that U of H has seen in Big 12 play that I would say are a comp to LSU are like UCF, Colorado, and Oklahoma State. And that is not a trio of teams that you would like your offense to be compared to.
Yeah, I thought one of the most interesting things that our guest Hunt talked about was that really there's nobody on this LSU roster that is like guaranteed to be here next year. Like usually you see a couple of guys
will, but at least you going out, yeah.
And even I was like, when I asked him, I was like, when he gave that answer, we had like multiple questions in there about like who should we be watching for on at this game to see who's somebody who is trying out for their job, and he was just like nobody. And so like you and I had to cut a question because he had answered it by saying like literally there's nobody playing for their job here. Like he'll probably keep a couple of people, but no, expect a clean house this year. I am interested, just like as a total aside, as a college football fan who likes the behind the scenes stuff, how many people he brings in on transfers this year.
It's gonna be a lot. Yeah, I think there will be some guys that will stick around because inevitably there's at least
guys who are like Louisiana guys who want to play.
Yeah, and again, good defensive team. So like you would assume a decent amount of that defense is back. How much the Ole Miss staff follows. Obviously the offensive staff there's gonna be heavy on the Ole Miss Kiffin guys who are still there for the playoff game. Like, I think that stuff as a general college football fan interests me. I think the way the Cougs will be able to win this is kind of what I guys talked about. It's just like, I think don't give the ball away offensively, few scoring drives, and let your pretty good defense take care of it against an absolutely terrible offense.
Absolutely.
So on the topic of Cougar football, a couple more related things, but not maybe bowl game related directly. The first one is that we had some coaching staff movement in the last week or two. We figured we'd discuss while we were still on the subject. 2 weekends ago, it was announced that second-year defensive secondary coach Josh Christian Young would be leaving to join the Kentucky staff under new head coach Will Stein in a similar role, but will still be with the Cougars through the conclusion of the Texas Bowl. And we also found out last week that wide receivers coach and assistant head coach Derek Sherman will be leaving to join the Iowa State staff in a similar role and will not be on staff for the Texas Bowl. I'll let you have at it, Bobby. My thoughts are pretty simple, and I believe on-field production supports me. One of these coaches had multiple seasons of his unit performing well. That's Josh Christian Anderson. One didn't. That's Derek Sherman. which also isn't to say that I wanted Sherman fired or not given any credit for Amari Thomas developing into a first-team All Big 12 receiver. But honestly, I think Thomas would have been that guy if he had gotten good quarterback play around him, and he did. And I don't think any coach should get disproportionate amount of credit for what Amari himself did. So, Bobby, what are your thoughts on these moves? And we'll get to it here in a second, because we now know who is going to be the replacement in both instances.
Yeah, I don't have many thoughts outside of the ones that you just kind of shared there. It's not like I was ever like, oh, I remember very early on in the season going like, are the receivers not getting separation? What is happening here? So I think, to your point, Amari Thomas was going to be Amari Thomas no matter what, especially once he built that relationship up with Connor Wigman. So not terribly upset to see him go, but also not like I think you said it there where I wasn't like, oh man, he needs to be fired. Our wide receivers are terrible, but it's like, oh man, like, would I have loved to keep him? Sure. Am I super disappointed he's gone? No. I always joke that like things can be fine. Like a lot of times people want to be like, oh no, if it's not the best thing in the world, it's the worst thing in the world. And it's like, no man, things can just be cool. Like, it's fine. I'm not overly disappointed. I'm not, it's not like I saw him as a up and coming coach who was going to eventually take over this offense or anything like that. So
yeah, and Christian Young, excuse me, I would say feel a little more like strongly positively towards, but also not just like, oh no, like how can we possibly like same with Zach Etheridge left as cornerbacks coach late in the offseason. Like obviously would have been nice to have Keontae Scott, who's apparently playing a pretty critical role on Miami's very good defense here this year, which would have been Zach Etheridge staying here, but I don't think it would have radically changed the 2025 Cougar season if he stayed. And PJ Hall seems like he's doing a pretty good job with the guys that are here. And maybe that's colored by the fact that I think we found two pretty good replacements here that I'll jump into as well. One as we'll get to from not very far from where you're from. We found out for the receivers coach vacancy that Brian Bell, who is in his second year on staff as an offensive analyst, he would be stepping in and replacing Sherman as the receivers coach. His older brother, Sean, has been the passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach these past 2 seasons. Bell himself was a state championship head coach at your alma mater, Bobby, China Spring High, and was also, I believe, immediately between being at China Spring and U of H on the Baylor staff with his Sean Bell's older brother as an analyst before he joined the Cougar staff. Before that, he was starting quarterback for a couple of really good Sam Houston teams under Willie Fritz in the early 2010s. It seems like a pretty smooth transition there, and astounding that we have 2 different grads of your high school now on the on-field Houston Cougar football coaching staff.
Hey man, the Bells are legendary in China Spring, Texas. Actually, my first ever newspaper article that I did at China Spring was I had to go preview the district with Coach Bell, their dad, right? The OG Bell. And I walk in and I sit down to have, like, I had to request the interview and all this stuff. And he was like on campus with us. And I walk in and on half, it was like cut in half. Like the office was like in half. On the left-hand side was green and gold, and it was all Sean's like accomplishments and stuff. And then on the other half, it was the Columbia blue and dark blue of all the China Spring accomplishments. So just kind of fun there. So yeah, it's really cool. I have a very close family friend who's very close with the Bells. So really cool to see that their dad is an absolute legend, and yeah, pretty crazy to see Sean graduated the year before I got there, and I think Brian.
I looked it up. He would have been a couple years, I think, behind you.
Yeah, I think Brian was on the team when I was there. So some cool stuff there. Just kind of blows your mind a little bit when you really think about it. It's not like it was like a big high school, right? It was 3A at the time. What would now be 4A. It's not like,
I mean, like very good 3A. I mean, you guys were state champions.
I never saw them or anything like that.
No doubt.
Yes. So pretty cool.
And we also found out today, Tuesday the 23rd, that Stephen F. Austin's cornerbacks coach, Marcus Trice, will be taking over for Josh Christian Young, co-coaching the secondary with PJ Hall, who I believe I mentioned a bit earlier. Trice just finished his 4th season on the Lumberjack staff, a season where they finished in the FCS playoff quarterfinals, had one of, if not the best pass defenses at the Division I FCS level, originally from Mesquite, coached for several years at DFW high schools before joining the SFA staff. I believe he was a safeties coach before the 22 season. Also, this past season, maybe others, but I know as recently as this season, had the title of defensive recruiting coordinator. And you can never have enough guys who know how to recruit the Metroplex on your staff. All my feelings as someone who grew up in Houston aside, obviously huge football center for the state and lots of good Cougar players past and present from the Metroplex. And if it gives the staff more of a foothold in future classes there, I think that can only be a good thing. We talked to our good SFA friend, the Rev, and he had nothing but good things to say about Trice as a coach as well. So it seems like a pretty good replacement hire there, Bobby.
Yeah, really good too. Anytime you can keep guys who have Texas ties, even though, I know how much you hate DFW. A lot of good players come out of DFW. Anytime you can keep those connections kind of strong, recruiting always pays off with it.
No doubt. And before we close the topic of football entirely, we have the finale of our season football pick'em head-to-head, down with a pickness. Yours truly holding an extremely narrow 305 to 300 point lead going into the bowl season, going into the Cougs bowl week. Like we did during the regular season, we're going to pick 2 U of H game things, one involving the game's point spread or total, one involving some previously agreed upon team props like yardage, turnovers, touchdowns, and the like. Those are going to be worth the majority of the points, and we also have one spread or total pick'em involving a non-U of H Big 12 bowl game of our choosing. Bobby, one last time this season, give me your picks.
Look, I'm a little skeptical that I have to go first here with you, the lead, and you just pick
if you do you want my picks first?
No, I'm just.
I got them.
I fully trust that you're not going to do that. but I'm just saying it's a little sketch. No, but in all seriousness, I'm going to take the over on the U of H LSU game of 41.5. This really feels like a 28-14, 35-14 kind of game either way. Like one team's going to get out and score. Both teams have good defenses, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but it just kind of feels like one of those games where a turnover happens. So I'm going to take the over of 41.5. The spread just felt too much like a trick to me. Cougs minus 2.5. If the Cougs win, I think it'll be by more than the 2.5. But bowl games with the interim staff for LSU, like all their things that are happening there, like this could be one of those games where their locker room goes, look, it's just us. We need to rally. This is a chance for us to go show out, and they come out and they win, something like that. So I just didn't feel comfortable taking that. But I do feel like this is, like I said, a 28-14. I think the line's actually really good at 41.5. I am going to take the over of U of H of, we agreed on half a passing touchdown. That hasn't really worked for me this year, where I'm taking the inevitably they're going to get one. But this, again, I don't know why I'm doing it, but if it's going to be something like a 28-14 kind of game, I feel like the Cougs are going to get a passing touchdown in there. And then my bowl game pick is going to be BYU minus 4.5 versus Georgia Tech. I don't know. Is there going to be like that rally around the flag kind of moment where their coach was going to get poached by Penn State, and they're just going to come out and just play for the guy and make it look like that BYU and their administration made the right call by giving him all that extra money? It just kind of feels like one of those moments where I stayed with you guys. You guys you're my guys, and they come out fired up and play the game and win that game by more than 4.5.
The only thing that was scary about that one, I did not take that game, but I did think about it, is that this is Haynes King, their super senior quarterback's final game, Georgia Tech, and that's what ultimately sort of scared me away from that. My first pick, the spread or total pick, I went with the Cougars minus 2.5. I don't think U of H is going to run away with this one, but I could absolutely see the Cougars winning by somewhere between 3 to 6 points. If I had to guess, that's where it's going to be. So I took the Cougars there. I took LSU under half a rushing touchdown, because this Cougar team the West Virginia game, which was kind of a clunker aside, this has been a very consistently good run defense. You're not missing very many key guys there. I think even if somehow things don't go right for U of H in this game, let's just say the offense really just does not get out of first gear or something like that. I struggle to see the Cougars doing what nobody's done this year and allowing LSU to actually rush for a decent number of yards. So I feel confident that under half a rushing touchdown, and I took Utah minus 15.5 in their bowl game. I can't even remember what the opponent was, but it was one of those teams that lost their coach. Utah, final game of Kyle Whittingham. For any of their faults this season, like they were one of those teams that just, man, if that BYU game goes differently, like I'm not saying they for sure beat Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech put a pretty
they put a big
sizable win on them
them
in Salt Lake City. I would have liked him in the rematch a little more than BYU, if that makes sense. Do I think they would have won? Would I have bet on them? No, but I feel like that's one of those teams that in the locker room there feels like they should have been a playoff team. Feels like, and playing for Kyle Whittingham in his final game. Other jobs, well, Nebraska. They're playing Nebraska. No Dylan Raiola. Dana. Although I don't know.
Dang,
Dana in Las Vegas.
I didn't even think about the Raiola aspect of it.
No confirmation whether Dana and I will be hanging out on the nights of the 29th and 30th when I'm back in Vegas. And
do you know what I would pay for you to be at a casino and see Dana Holgerson there?
You know what? I take the social contract as a Vegas local so strongly, Bobby. I wouldn't fuck with him. I'd let him whatever lose $1,000 and drink 3 to 5 comped mixed drinks. Like that's part of the social contract, especially as tourism has been going down in my wonderful hometown. I'm gonna let him slide. But genuinely, I think it's gonna be one of those where Nebraska doesn't look like they're up to it, and the folks with the Utes, I think, send Kyle Whittingham out on a winning note, and I think win pretty comfortably.
That's actually a really good pick.
But I genuinely thought about BYU. I thought about USC against TCU as well, because I think that could be one that TCU no shows. Certainly, I want to go back to something you said earlier. I am going to be out of pocket if that crowd at the Alamo Bowl. I am going to do something that I haven't probably done in 8 or 9 years and actively try to get our Twitter account blocked by the Alamo Bowl if they have like because the San Antonio locals show up good for that, so I'm sure it won't be like fields of empty seats. Like it'll still be like a pretty respectable.
But if it's not a sea of purple,
and cardinal and gold, and just that they went out of their way. And I don't, again, I'll say, like I said last episode or 2 episodes ago, whenever we talked about it, I do not blame Duarte for this. It is his job as a capital J journalist to like get these people, even if it's not entirely on the record, to be willing to talk to them in some way. But that they went out of their way to like trash our fan base and our ability to travel to the game. I'm going to be out of pocket, Bobby. Just heads up.
I don't blame you. You have full.
But I thought about USC there because USC didn't have their quarterback opt out like TCU's did, but ultimately went with the Utes and felt pretty good about it.
That's fair.
I don't think we have very much to talk about this, but I think we have to talk about it. And I'm just going to say Cougar women's basketball started Big 12 play.
Yep, they sure did, Sam.
Did. All right, that's it. It's been great talking to you. No, I mean, you lost 101-46. You knew playing in Morgantown was going to be like, this is top 3, probably most difficult. Like, I gotta be honest. We'll get to this in a second too. The schedule makers really fucked.
yeah, did no favors.
Basketball. Like, okay, West Virginia at Morgantown, a team that just historically has matched up really badly for the Cougars. And oh, by the way, like, yeah, that was a bit of a tough start, right? Boom, you get Iowa State for your first home game, and Audie Crooks, and just a team that's been very good as well. So I think you just kind of burned the tape on this one. The 39-point third quarter.
Yeah, when you score 46 in the game. Like,
the crazy thing is, like, you didn't shoot badly. You were like, you were
41%.
Yeah, 6 of 14 from the field. Like, yeah, you feel pretty good about that. Then you look at the West Virginia side. Oh, they made over 80% of their shots and shot 15 free throws.
I'm gonna tell you something though. That wasn't even the biggest concern for me, is that they shot 80%. We had 36 turnovers, Sam. 36 turnovers in a basketball game.
Yeah, 7
There's
to 30,
40
7 to
minutes.
36. Like I'm not gonna like do too much gawking at the stats. Like it's tough, man. It is
36 turnovers is a tough number to look
it's a
at,
tough number to look at.
especially when you get 12. Sam, they had 25 steals. That's so many steals. Like, that's
Yeah.
so many steals. That's
Because you
one every
you didn't
2
really
minutes.
shoot it that bad. I mean, you made purely on shooting percentage, which obviously that's not how you do this. Purely on shooting percentage, you made like 41% of your shots. Like that's not amazing, but it's not terrible for women's basketball, and it's better than a number of the games we've had this year. But when unfortunately you're turning the ball over 36 times, like that's gonna make it challenging.
I gotta look up one stat. You
Yeah,
go while I look this up.
I think this is also the challenge that you just don't really have a point guard on this roster or a player that you would trust to run the point against Big 12 competition. I think that's the challenge here. But also, I will reiterate, year one of a multi-year rebuild. Like you shouldn't like this game is very tough. This game is very difficult for us to talk about. And I think we're trying to use humor here to not just be like, how they play so bad. Like it's just this was never really a game you're gonna be competitive. And I think how uncompetitive is a little frustrating, but I think you also just kind of burned the tape on this one afterwards. Have you found your stat? Have I vamped enough time?
You took 41 shots and you turned the ball over 36 times.
I guess it's better than turning it over 41 times and shooting 36, right? I mean, I'm not making fun. You kind of have to laugh to keep from crying, honestly, in this situation.
Look, I can tell you right now, Matthew Mitchell saw these stats and were like, he at least kind of chuckled, didn't he? Like he saw him and he was like, God damn, we got our ass kicked. Like that's gotta be like at some point as a coach, you just kind of go like, yeah, we got our asses handed to us there. Like you don't really, there's not much you can say, right? There's not much you can say or even improve. Like 36 turnovers, I'm sorry, just like that's not the coach's fault. Like the coach can't prevent 36 turnovers.
It kind of goes back. It goes back to anything. It's just that you don't really have someone that you feel wild about.
Yep.
Being a college point guard at this point.
Yep.
Next up, you have the Iowa State Cyclones at home at the Fertitta Center. A hell of a way to kick it off. And Iowa State.
I didn't preview that game just because it is after our next episode.
Well, we'll leave that. We'll leave that to next episode. But suffice to say, it will be challenging. It will be challenging the Cougars, just like you did. Just like you shouldn't judge anything about Houston Cougar women's basketball's trajectory based on how the West Virginia game in Morgantown went. Probably should copy paste that to the game that will be occurring technically right after we record to the game. Game will be occurring at the Fertitta Center, and that is all the Houston Cougar stuff we have to talk about today. So, Bobby, take us home for the second to last time this year.
All right, well, that is it for this episode of the Scott and Holman podcast. We appreciate you guys listening so much, and we really hope to see you guys in Houston at NRG Stadium while the Cougars are playing. We're really excited for that. But if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear it. You can find us on social media at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. You can, if 2 weeks, you got like a week and a half left. If you have sworn off social media, you can make it. And you want to email us, you can find us at shpodcast@gmail.com. All of those are podcast, PAWDCAST. Sam, it could be someone's first time listening, so I got to make sure I throw that out there. And the other thing that we are asking you guys right now is to share the podcast with a Cougar fan in your life. I talked about earlier how I think this is going to be a coming out party for your Houston Cougar athletic program on Saturday. We're going to show up and be loud. If we can sell out 6,000 tickets before they go on sale, we can get 4,000 listens in 4,000 downloads in a month, which is what we are aiming for. Tell a friend. We would appreciate it so much. Again, we're not trying to reach that number because we get some magic sponsorship and we can quit our jobs and do this full time or something like that. We're doing it because it's just a goal for us. We're kind of close. So please tell a friend. We would appreciate it. If you don't want to tell a friend or you don't have any friends that are Coug fans, totally understand. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast app of choice, whether that's Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, anything like that. We would appreciate it greatly. I think that's it. I think I touched everything. Did I mention Patreon? Patreon.com/SH podcast. $5 a month gets you some really good premium content. Like Sam said at the start of the show, we are going to be doing recruiting one. Sam is doing some really good writing on basketball right now that I have enjoyed as well. So yeah, we would appreciate that as little as $5 a month. If you are a sovereign wealth fund and your golf league has had multiple people retire, and you want to throw money at a Houston Cougar podcast, you can certainly we'll take the phone call at least. So thank you guys so much for listening. Sam, what do we always say here, buddy?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!